You're on the artist Craig Richards channel, where you always learn a multitude of key concepts to improve your painting skills.
So I'm going to tag this, what I'm saying right now, onto the front of the video you're about to see. And the reason is I just wanted to clarify that all of this that you're going to see get developed today during the video, it is just to talk about these are some of the things that you might incorporate into your painting as you develop your painting. So this is not the way you begin a painting. So that's the point that I'm trying to make is don't try to begin your painting like this. This is just to display some of these points that have to do with creating a point of interest in your painting. So anyway, I think that'll make sense as you watch the painting. Okay. Thanks. Hey there, welcome to paint class. We're here at the Arts Place of Stokes in Danbury, North Carolina again. Today, what interest has been something that's just kept popping up as we've been talking about it. And I want to point out that there are all these like little tricks for being able to get somebody to that point in your painting. And so the first thing to talk about is composition. So there are a gazillion different compositions. If you were in my plein air workshop recently, you know there's rule of thirds and golden mean and classic compositions that are just tons and tons of them. But this is something that Luis Escobedo taught me, and I think it's just an excellent, just like really quick, easy way of being able to establish the point of interest in your composition, and therefore you can kind of guide your composition to that. And the thing you do is, so I've got this oriented portrait orientation as opposed to landscape orientation. We're going to paint this painting here, and it's a little more narrow than it is wide. It's kind of a little wider than is a standard size. So we're going to have to kind of figure some things out with this. But here is the point. Wherever you are trying to get us to our eye to go to, we want it to be in one of four quadrants. And if you follow rule of thirds, and if you follow golden mean, if you follow all the classic compositions, you're going to find that by and large they are going to take you to somewhere that is off center. And so this might be a little bit of a paradigm shift for a lot of people, because if you're used to photography, and we're all used to seeing photography for sure, photographers quite often will put the subject matter right in the middle of the composition. But let me suggest to you that when things are a little bit off center in the composition, or even if it's just there's this flower right there dead center in the composition, but light's coming in from the side and there's this golden glow right off to the side of that flower, now it's not right in the center. The flower's in the center, but the point of interest is off to the side. So a good photographer will think like that. So we divide it into quadrants, and then if we take and put just a little dot in each of the four quadrants, those should be your point of interest, or as close to those as possible will make for an interesting painting. So with this, we have this church. I mean, there is a lot going on. Edie, you mentioned that earlier. She picked up that photo reference. We're painting this today, yeah. So like, boy, there's a lot going on in this, right? So, and there is. There's all these buildings, all this color with the fall, all these these change-ups of color from greens to oranges to very faded out looking colors in the background here. But to me, this road coming in and this white church, since everything else is like all this chroma and all this color, this white church actually kind of stands out, you know, because it doesn't have, we often say doesn't have color if it's white, right? But white is a color, but it does not have the same kind of intensity and power that maybe a lot of these other particularly high chroma colors have. So that to me is the point of interest, and this beautiful red-orange tree right next to it, there's some right behind it as well. So there's kind of like this little aura formed right around that church by all that color, right? And you know, if I wanted to, I could say, I've got a different idea of what the point of interest is going to be in this, and alter it around a little bit to make it what I want it to be. But that's what I'm going to go for. Now, if you notice, if we were to divide this right down the middle, we'd end up with this pretty much right dead center. It might be a little bit off of the center of the canvas from top to bottom, but as far as side to side, it's right dead center. So what I would suggest then is that we think about having our church over here and have that that high chroma tree somewhere right there, have our road kind of coming in and across like this, so that it's taking us into that quadrant right there. Okay, so that's composition, getting a point of interest in your composition. Light to dark, we just kind of talked about that this church being so light against everything behind here makes it stand out, light to dark. So you've got this barn that's aged and it's almost black right in here on this barn. These dark trees are very dark. The dark pines, there's a dark pine behind this. And so this is kind of surrounded by a lot of darkness. Now, if you want to really bring out that light, then you may even want to push how much darkness is around that church, okay? So as we think about kind of mapping this in, I'm just going to kind of throw a wash on here, okay? So this is not the color of everything that's around it and so forth, but let's just throw some stuff in. I'm going to get that a little bit more cool, not so warm of a wash. And that sky is a little more bluish gray. Boy, that's a high chroma bit of throwing that paint in there, that blue paint in at the last minute there. So I'm going to throw a little more brown in there, neutralize that out a little bit. We'll just go ahead and wash in the whole canvas, okay? Whoa! I did not mean to grab that. Did not mean to grab that, all that glue.
It's a happy accident.
It could be. In this case, I think it's a sucky accident. It's not exactly what I wanted. But, yeah. Bob Ross might have been able to make that into something really fantastic. I'm just adding a little brown to that to kind of neutralize it. go ahead and just get this kind of gray and neutral all over. And then we're going to kind of revisit the composition and the light to dark. So running here's our little spots in the quadrants, right? And this is where we're going to go to. And so we're doing light to dark, creating a point of interest with light to dark. And I might very well just kind of zoom in a little bit also, make this a little larger, take up a little bit more of that composition with this church. And here's some more repeated light right here, the roof on the side of that building, that barn or building, whatever you want to call it, that has the aged wood. So let's throw that in there too, because that's some of that light brightness all in that one area. And we're just going to extract out some of this. You see some of the roof on the side of the church. And some of the side of the building. And that seems pretty light. Because I just extracted it out of a very neutral dark background. It's not a super dark background, but compared to the background, it's pretty light. But now what will happen if we go back in with some titanium white? All of a sudden, bam, that's really, from light to dark, that's going to be pretty powerful. Another thing that we want to talk about, point of interest, is warm to cool. So we have all of this out and around here that is pretty much in the cool range. These dark trees are cool. That background that has been neutralized out is cool. But if you wanted to, you could take and push that coolness a little bit. So you could push that blue a little bit. I'm using some French ultramarine blue with white. And so this whole area back here that is where that tree line is back there meeting the sky, and the sky itself, you know, is blue. So we might push how light to dark that is. We might push how bluish it is on purpose, just to create a sense of coolness in this area, so that we can also incorporate some of this very warm color. And you know what I'm going to do before I put that warm color on? I'm going to extract out for it so that that warm color is not mixing with any of this neutral gray that I've got going on here. And we'll go ahead and extract out a little bit for back in here where there's some of these other trees that are near the church building, and maybe that other one back over in here a little bit. And so there's our point of interest, and we're going to throw this warm color here, close proximity to these blues and these dark greens. Let's go ahead and throw in one of those dark greens. So we'll use a little bit of lemon yellow and some French ultramarine blue and make a very dark green. And we'll add some burnt sienna to that to make it a very neutral dark green. So that when we throw that in, and that may be, you know, that's too dark. You don't want everything to be like so highly contrasted that it's crazy, you know. But we have a big pine here, and kind of a rounded big pine here. So with these cool colors, right next to that warm color stands out like a sore thumb, which brings us to high chroma and neutral. So everything around it can be cool, but it also, if you make it neutral and cool, so that it's more grayish and not so, you know, we could have made this green for those trees a color more like this. And you see that chroma in that? We could push it even farther and have like a really pretty high chroma green. What would happen if all of these was a high chroma green like that? Then all of a sudden that chroma right there on that orange, it's not as powerful, right? So it's the contrasting elements that are going on here. Excuse me. Away with you. No more super bright green right there. When we're talking about that scale, we're talking about intensity. So you have an intensity scale, and on one end of the scale is high chroma color. On the other end of the scale is neutral color. So we want to keep all of this neutral. It could be a little bit more greenish, some of this, because a lot of this is so dark that you're really not seeing any color in there. And we could add a little bit of color to it, a little bit of green color to it, but we don't want it to be high chroma. We want it to be neutral. You notice I'm mixing it with this very neutral mix, and it doesn't have to be as dark as what I have on there either. So we can have it where it is dark, but you know, a little more in the grayish green kind of category like this. Some of these are going to be darker than others. Some are going to be a little bit lighter on one edge and a little darker on one side, that kind of thing. But if you start kind of surrounding your high chroma, you start surrounding your light to dark, now you're creating points of interest because of the contrasting elements again. So, so what have we done so far? We've got composition, getting it in the right spot. Leading the eye in would be, you know, the job of this road to a certain extent. And then light to dark, So we could really work on getting some of these darks built up around this white church to more of a sense of that light to dark. When you're wanting to make rough wood, if you get a little bit of that brown, a little bit of that blue on your brush all at the same time, and then you kind of pull and stop. It'll leave kind of a sense of, it'll leave a sense of kind of that feel of wood. Okay, let's throw a little bit more of that kind of neutral green in over top of this. And this pine tree here. And the more that we kind of play around with neutralized stuff that is a little bit dark, all out and around here, the more that this white is going to stand out as being powerful. And see how we're now kind of surrounding it with everything that's a little darker. Now, y'all, you know, if you're not doing a demonstration and you're taking your time and doing a painting, you can take your time and develop this, make those colors very accurate, make those lights to darks. You know, where on the value range are we talking about for each tree, for each dark building, you know, for each gray roof, all of those kind of things. So you get it to where it is accurate, you know, and works together. Now, when I say accurate, that kind of denotes that we're talking about trying to copy accurately what your photo reference is. But keep in mind that the photo reference is not the art. It never is. It's your painting that's the art. And so when you do that, you can kind of shoot for kind of copying that photo reference. But at some point you have to start asking yourself some questions about, like, if I veered away from what the photo reference shows and start just thinking about as a painting all by itself, what is going to make this painting more lovely, make it more beautiful? You know, what can I do to do that? You may find that you're going to change a lot of things about your photo reference, so don't be afraid to do that. The reason that we do use photo references, a lot of it has to do with drawing and composition, you know, because if you try to create things straight out of your head, and I think that's the one thing that I've had to kind of, like all beginning students pretty much have had to say, okay, don't just think about that. Go out and get you know, something. Remember that you were putting that eagle into your painting, Kitty, and I was saying, go and find a bunch of different photos of eagles until you find the one that you really like that's doing what you're wanting it to do. And then you have an accurate thing, because if you try to do it out of your head, then what's going to happen is you're going to make that barn look like something. You know, it's a building, but it may not even look like a barn. It may not have that barn-shaped roof on it, and that's what you want. So, you know, being accurate with it that way, but you don't have to be where you copy everything about it, okay? So that brings up then color complements. So if I've got this white church here, and I'm trying to create again, a point of interest around that white church. As I add the white in on the church, that steeple is actually kind of blue, but I'm going to make it white because it's going to be nice and bright if it's white. And because there's this bluish haze behind it, what is the color complement for blue, y'all?
Orange. Correct.
Orange, absolutely, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to take some of this beautiful cadmium barium orange and I'm going to mix it with some white. And I'm not fully mixing it. There's something that's referred to as broken color where it's not fully mixed and there's little bits of the color in there instead of finely mixed. And if I put just a little spark, whoops, it's not coming off. I'm extracting. I'm going to get a little bit more of the orange. Now, is there orange on that steeple there? No, it's actually gray, but a little bit of that cadmium barium orange kind of intermixed with the white. You might want to keep it from being so obvious. So I'm just kind of rubbing some of this white over to the edge of that. But it's going to give it just a little glow right on its edge that people probably aren't even going to notice, but they're going to perceive that there's a little bit of a glow in your painting because of that. So close proximity with these things. If you're, lots of times in order to make something white really kind of glow, I like to use a little bit of yellow lots of times mixed in with the white. And when you do that, don't mix it in to the point that people walk up to it and go, why is your roof yellow? Because if they're seeing it as yellow, you've got too much yellow in it, almost assuredly. I do that with clouds lots of times. So again, it might be just a little bit of an edge. I've got a little bit too much yellow.
Craig, other than the work you're doing on the church right now and steeple, would you call the rest of it the underpainting?
Yes. Yeah, as a matter of fact, like a lot of this, ordinarily you would approach it as an underpainting. I'm pointing out little aspects of this that might be much farther along in your process of pulling the painting together. So I always say to develop your big blocks of value and color first. And so that's absolutely correct to do it that way. That way you'd have the color of this field in here, a light, kind of yellow green. You'd have, these blues and these grays all develop before you would do any of this, But the point of telling you this is to say, as you're developing it, think about these things because they'll help develop your point of interest. And so hear that word develop, that's where this is coming in at. So I put a little bit of yellow in with the white on that edge. So what might I do with the background or the shadow under the edge of the roof? Anybody have an idea?
Purple?
Absolutely. So since purple and yellow are, just so you know, the tapping is to let me know, hurry up, because we're at a crossroads. So, but today I'm just going to take a little more time than usual to do the demonstration. So I might, as shadows in this kind of orangey tree, and I might push that tree a little bit more to the yellow range instead of to the orange range, which is what it actually is. So I'm deciding that I'm going to do some things that are not quite a part of what the painting actually, the photo reference actually shows. So I'm making these choices. Why? Because we have learned from master painters over many centuries that these things work, you know. If I were to then develop that orangey tree in the background there, I might make it a little more yellow orange, and might even throw a little bit of broken color into that. So now the purples in there are the shadows in the tree, you know, and those color complements can kind of work together. You're never going to make that high a chroma for a tree. That would be a bit much. So you would go back in, and since orange, the color complement is blue, I'm going to make a very bluish green and use that anywhere that I'm trying to develop this tree to have any shadows in the tree or any limbs or whatever. That's going to be made with more of a kind of bluish color, and then we can neutralize some of that out and keep some of that. You don't want all of it. What we see around behind it, we may start developing with some of those more bluer sort of colors, so that it has that impact with the orange. We might incorporate a little bit more purple in with that yellow tree. And so that brings us to thick and thin. And so this steeple, I could make it nice and thin. Most of this out and around here is pretty thin. But if I use thicker paint, there's something that happens when you use thick paint, particularly in close proximity to thin paint. The light from the ceiling, light coming in from the side or from above, will glance off of the thick part of the paint. So you actually have a reflective surface created. And that reflective surface will actually reflect light. So whereas we don't have paint that actually emits light, so we can't draw a picture of a light bulb with that light emitting paint and we'd be like, oh boy, that light bulb's bright. You know, we can't do that. We can get light to glance off of our paint and create a little bit more sense of light. So what would you do then with the rest of the white of the church? You wouldn't want it to be all equally the same, so you would go with thinner paint, and you might even neutralize that paint in some way, so that I just put a little bit of purple in it because we were using that yellow. So that just a little bit of purple is making it a little more neutral and not so bright. Which makes that steeple stand out a little bit more. And if we throw the shadows in on that, throw in the windows or whatever like that, that's going to make that bright part stand out even more. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about point of interest is psychology. This is something that is not like one of those technical things as far as like how you're using your paint, but it's your subject matter that you're choosing. So it is just, I don't know why, but it's because I guess we relate to things that are a part of us. Like you're going to be more likely to go, oh, I'm proud of my daughter or my son than you are to say, I'm proud of that person over there that I don't really know. You know, and so there's certain psychologies in that. There is also this thing of connection with things. So nature, you're not going to have so much with nature. I mean, I love nature, so don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is there certain things that trump other things as far as capturing your interest. So if you have a bunch of trees and you have a church sitting there in the middle of the trees, what's going to happen? It's because it's a man-made object that it stands out against all of that nature behind it, and you're going to have more of a connection to it because it's made by humans, right? And then if it's something that's a vehicle for some reason, a boat, a car, if you have a Maserati sitting in front of this church, it's definitely going to capture your attention. Nice car. If you have a person standing next to the car, the person is going to capture your attention over the car, over the church. And if you have a kid is going to trump an adult, particularly if it's a cute kid. And then we go kind of full circle, because if it's a cute kid with puppies, I mean, you're done. You know, I mean, like, nothing can fight that. It's like, you know, if you're having wars against your different superheroes, Bugs Bunny's going to whoop their butt every time, you know. But, you know, that's the way it is that if you're choosing composition, you're choosing subject matter, there are certain things that you put puppies and little kids laughing right here, and then you try to make this your point of interest over here, it ain't gonna work. You know, so don't fight it. You know, like, work with what you know, create what is going to work for you. If you want that to be the point of interest, you create these things that draw us into that spot. And I guess the last thing I should say about point of interest is this. Don't think of your painting as something you put up on the wall and you want somebody to look at your painting and go, that's a nice painting. Think in terms of creating a point of interest in your painting, and then you build a relationship between you and the viewer. So the person is drawn into your painting. They become, as Bob Ross said, your little world, you know. It's your little world, but you do that painting, you want somebody to enter that little world and to be a part of it by being drawn to something in the painting. So there you go. That's point of interest. Next week we're going to come back and we're going to talk about simplifying. And after this mess that I went through today, you're probably ready for something simple. So there you go. Anybody have any questions about all of that? Okay. All right. Well, we'll come around and help you with your paintings.
I want you to step on that.
So what did you use?
Everybody's in
Didn't you start out with some ultramarine and then there was 2 blue and you added what?
If you add burnt sienna or if you add orange to blue, you're going to get it to neutralize out. And then
Try that. Try it again.
yeah, burnt sienna has a certain amount of yellow in it also.
It came up to this one, really a black.
Oh, yeah, so it depends on how much brown or how much blue you put in it in the mix. So what you probably want to do at this point is just take a little bit of that and dump it in the white.
whatever way to look.
It's easier
Okay.
to darken
Okay.
a color than it is to
Alright, so-
lighten a color.
Ultramarine, sienna, and whoops, and white.
And white, yeah.
Okay.
So I think you need more white still yet, but you know,
Okay,
yeah.
there we go.
Yep.
It needs some blue in there.
And just a little
Light
bit of
blue.
blue, but more white. It needs to be a
A
little
little lighter.
Yeah. So this is the idea
I see,
anyway,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and you can start incorporating some color in here. In particular, you can see some of these tree shapes in here would most certainly have some color. The farther down the canvas it goes, or in other words, the closer to us, the closer to the foreground that it comes, the more you're going to see color start becoming introduced into the whole thing.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Because
Yes,
you've
that's
got
it.
a pretty significant shadow from your easel. Let me suggest that you do this. Use this little piece right here. Okay, dropping down. And we just hold it in place with that little piece right there. Now you have a shadow right there, but everywhere else it's not being shadowed by this wood piece. What I do on my plein air easel is I take these out, so you can just loosen this, slide them out. Well, they probably have a little paint on them. Anyway, that's what you would do, is you would slide them out, take a ruler and hold it across here so that the ruler is exactly halfway on the hole on both sides at the same time. It's kind of hard to do. And then mark with a pencil across here so that you have a line that is exactly from the center of this hole to the center of that hole.
I got you.
And then you run a screw just a little bit right below where your center line is.
Right.
And then your canvas will lock right, if it's a like a beveled headed screw, it'll lock right in behind that.
Right.
Because
Hold
if you have your painting is oriented landscape, you can grab it with these things.
Okay.
But if it's oriented like this and it's a smaller canvas, it'll just drop right down in between them. So, but that screw will make it so that you can keep it in place like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, you've got the color and the values. You'll notice it's just ever so slightly darker towards the top, and right down next to the tree line, it gets even a little lighter. I
Yeah.
think that's mist in there, so
Right.
there's not as much mist up in the air. And and you'll see that lots of times where the mist is up in the air, but it's not as thick up in the air.
Right, right.
It's hanging along the tree line, you know.
True.
My hometown's like that. At Middlesboro, Kentucky, there's, it looks like, I don't know, this is just me, not a geologist speaking, but I think maybe a meteor hit in the mountains back when and flattened this section in the mountains. And so there's mountains all the way around it,
Right.
but it's just like a bowl.
Right.
And that's where the town has been built. And if you get up on, there's a overlook up top on one of the high mountains there called the Pinnacle. You can look out over the town, and there you can see the mist. It's like I don't know anything about these fancy coffees, but like a latte or whatever, where it's
Yeah,
got
that
the
little mist on
stuff
top,
on
so
top
high.
of it, you know. And it's like this bowl, and then there's Cumberland Gap, so there's this gap in the mountains, and it'll pour out. The mist will actually be pouring out of the bowl
Oh, goodness.
down into Tennessee.
To the valley.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's sort of like Grandfather Mountain. You ever go up there and it's a lot of mist. That's
Oh, yeah.
wild. And then it starts lifting.
Uh,
It's like etching.
exactly. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope you're getting a lot of value out of all of these videos that we're posting on the artist Craig Richards channel. You know, there's all kinds of how-tos, there's the weekly paint class, and there's occasional outings like going out in plein air somewhere We're going to be going down the Yadkin River in the spring, going to museums, things like that. I think you'd enjoy those. If you're getting value out of these, then like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You have to subscribe in order to be able to hit the notification bell, and that's for you. The reason I'm saying that is so that you know when the next paint class is coming out, so that if you're working on a painting and we're doing it again the next week, that you can follow along with us. And leave us comments, you know, not just for me, but for the students as well. Say, you know, Deb, you did a great painting. Kitty, you did a great painting. Or Craig, you did a great demonstration this week. That builds us up. And we want to build you up as well. We want to help you to keep painting and keep growing. You're doing great. Don't tell yourself you're not. You are doing wonderful. Just keep at it, and you'll learn and grow each week with us. So, happy painting. Okay.